I'm going to do something that I don't often do. Oh, do I do it? Yeah, I do it occasionally, and that is to present you with some good news. Now, initially, depending on which side of the fence you sit on, this may or may not appear to be good news, but there again, I think there is some good news in what I'm about to say. So stick with me. And remember, before you do anything else, subscribe to my video, ring the bell for further notifications, let me know what you think as well. So it doesn't cost you anything. Now, the news is that the coalition is doing pretty poorly, and that they're kind of not being able to get their act together. They're fighting with themselves, and One Nation sort of scooping up the rewards as a result of this continual debate. So, what I want to do today was to present you with some information in relation to all of that, and then have a look at those people that are likely to move over to One Nation. That is the good news. So let's have a look at the information. So I'm going to go to Kos Samaras, who's a poller in this area, and his polls are very, very reliable normally. As I've said before, Sky News quote him when it's doing them a favour. They don't quote him, and they'll criticise him when they're not, but that's Sky News. But in this particular instance, this is direct from Kos. And I think it's worth noting because he's talking about here the right structural realignment in Australia is here, and the numbers are brutal, he says. Our latest Australia Financial Review Redbridge Accent poll shows the former Conservative bloc has shrunk into a political rump, while One Nation has surged into the dominant force on the right. Start with the top line. One Nation isn't just ahead, it's ahead by a mile. Now look at what's left of the old order. Liberal Party of Australia outside Queensland 13%, Liberal in Queensland 4%, National Party of Australia 2%. And it gets worse when you cut in the cohorts that used to be the Coalition Industrial Base, Trade, TAFE qualifications, former Coalition combined 14%, One Nation are now at 33%, former Coalition 12%, amongst Gen X, One Nation now at 35%. Now, that particular stat tells us a lot. That last one, where the former coalition is 12%, One Nation 35%. Another way of saying former coalition because they're no longer a coalition. They have had a divorce, man, and it's brutal. And we'll probably see what happens around that the next couple of days. Because I think we need to understand that shift primarily has been from the left to the right, and that from the centre, or the moderates, I should say, to the right, and that the Labor Party have lost about 1%, 2% of the vote. Who knows where that's gone? But nevertheless, that's probably not all that important, as I'll show you in a moment. He goes on to say it's the structural transfer of conservative identity from mainstream centre-right parties to a populist right alternative. On the other side of the ledger, Australian Labor Party is holding steady. Labor's primary 34%, essentially where it was at the last election, so that hasn't changed, and we're reporting 56% two-party preferred to Labor. Exactly where they were before, nothing's changed there. But here's the key point forward. As the contest increasingly shifts towards Labor versus One Nation, we'll need to model and test preference behaviour in a Labor versus One Nation two-party framework, because the preference flows of former coalition voters will shape the next political era. Unless the former coalition can turn this around, big ask, just ask the Conservatives in the UK. So the issue there is that there has never been Labor versus One Nation as a first and second parties. So there's never been enough preferential votes to determine which way people are likely to vote. So predicting that is bloody difficult. So I just want to take you to the graph he's done, which kind of tells the whole picture. So Labor's at 34, One Nation's at 26, Coalition dismally at 19. So the two-party preferred, based on a coalition figure, is 56 to 44. But one has to wonder, is that an appropriate figure? Is that realistic, given that we don't know where those preferences goes? But we can guess that a lot of the preferences would probably go back to the Liberal Party. Hence, I guess, the 44. One Nation preferences were allocated to the former coalition parties based on the flow at the last election. Now, we don't know whether that's actually changed or not, but it is interesting to note that Gen Z, Millennials, Gen X, and baby boomers are all at around the same level, 33 to 34. What we do notice is Gen X and baby boomers among One Nation are at 35 and 35, so they're higher. So the question really that we're asking is, do Gen X and baby boomers, are they the ones that are going to are they the ones that are going to determine the final outcome when it comes to an election? Well, they may. But my guess is, as I've said before, it's really difficult for One Nation to gather enough new seats in the lower house in order to make a dent whatsoever. I think they will focus on the Senate and create havoc in the Senate. And there's a number of issues here. The first issue is, do we know what policies One Nation have apart from immigration? No, we don't. And is that policy, as I've stated in a previous video, appropriate given that it's almost the same number of immigrants that they're suggesting into Australia as do the Labor Party? It's only out by about 20,000. So is that an issue at the moment? No, it's how that issue is solved. The other thing too, I guess, is who is going to join this person? So who's going to join her in the party? So what other people are likely to shift over? And I think at this particular point in time, it's quite enticing for people that are disenchanted with the Liberal Party to make the shift. So there are two candidates for this. The first one is Alex Antic. Now, Antic is a right-wing conspiracy theorist of the extreme order, and that he is a crazy man, to put it mildly. And so he's disruptive amongst the coalition because he votes against many of their policies because he's too far right for them. So there's a good chance that Alex will move over to One Nation. So that's a good thing, because the Liberal Party don't want him anyway, I would guess. And secondly, he would be so disruptive in One Nation that unless you're a crazy right-wing person, unless you're the sort of person that is QAnon and extremely Trumpist, you wouldn't vote for him. He would be a turn-off. So it would not necessarily be good for their party. But Pauline wouldn't be interested in that, providing she maintains control. Now, the other person that may move is not someone who's currently not in government. But Pauline Bernardi may be one of those because he's a disenchanted individual, he's extreme, he's a Christian nationalist, he is far right as well as he's Antic. So they may find themselves in this woman's position, or that woman's party. So this is the good news, because what makes this the good news is that as they move, like people like Mark Latham, for example, who was a disruptor, a pain in the ass, and Pauline discovered what a pain in the ass he was. And these guys are ambitious, to say the least. So if Pauline has these people in the party room, just like Barnaby Joyce, she'll find herself with the same situation that she had with Mark Latham, and that he wanted to run the party, and he's a terrible human being anyway, and eventually he had to go. And as a result of all of that, it disrupted One Nation. The same thing, I think, is likely to happen again. There will be this disruption. And the Gen X and the baby, now incidentally, the Gen X in particular, a lot of males. So men seem to be attracted to Pauline Hanson's party because it's just so macho. So she'll look for these macho men like Pauline Bernardi and like Antic, not Mark Latham because he was too tough. But they will disrupt One Nation, and people will not necessarily like what they're seeing if Pauline Hanson takes those guys on. And she will, because for her they will mean extra votes. But will the reality, will the rubber hit the road when she comes to realise that at the end of the day, these guys have got ambitions, which would be to take over her role because she's an ageing old woman. This is what I think. Let me know what you think in the comment section below, and remember to subscribe to my videos. Ring the bell, it's free, it doesn't cost you anything. So let me know what you think. In the meantime, take care.